What if life was a series of turning points, each a new chance to learn, discover, and transform, all triggered by adventure and curiosity? This is how it's been for my guest today, Robert Hicks, author of New York Times bestselling novel, The Widow of the South, set in the final days of the Civil War. Today we're talking about how can our stories, both present and past, propel us and move us forward instead of keeping us stuck in a painful collective memory. I'm Tajci. At 19, I was a superstar and I was lost inside. I left it all behind, switched continents, and started all over. Years later, I found myself lost again, this time in the American dream. This is a story about awakening, about living the life you were created for, about going inward and discovering the joyous and purposeful person you and I are both meant to be. This is Waking Up in America. When I first moved to Franklin, Tennessee, a beautiful little town 20 minutes south of Nashville, I was really drawn to its European feel. People walking on the streets, sidewalk cafes, and a little shop with beautiful window displays. I noticed all the many historical markers, but I did ignore the cannon on the main square. I knew this was a site of a battles from the Civil War, but the stories I first heard were about people, were beautiful stories about people who lived there, who loved their little town. And so one of them that I heard from many others living in Franklin is Robert Hicks. Thank you so much for honoring us and being here today.
Well, I'm honored to be here.
So help me to introduce you properly. You were a novelist.
Right, sometimes.
Sometimes, and a music
I was a publisher, music publisher. I did artist development, and then I decided to become a novelist, which, was a little delusional since I'd never taken a creative writing course. But somehow, I was very fortunate.
And this show is all about turning points, about people who have these turning points that they decide, okay, I'm going to be a novelist, I'm going to be an artist, like Olga, in whose studio we're here today. And it's a beautiful thing. Now, I have a question about that. As a writer of historical novels, I'm always thinking, don't you have to study the history? Don't you have to be a historian? How does that work?
Well, I would never accuse myself of being a historian, but for X amount of years when I was a music publisher, as part of my community service. Now, you understand, when I moved to Franklin, there were about 7,000 people. And so they would kind of like fresh blood take you in, and you ended up working on projects. And I became more or less the driving force behind Carton Plantation and its preservation. And so I learned that story. I wasn't necessarily a Civil War geek before then. I really didn't know the story of the Battle of Franklin, but in trying to have the house brought back to what it might have looked like before the battle, I had to learn the story of the family. And in learning the story of the family, I had to learn the story of the Battle of Franklin, and having learned the story of the Battle of Franklin, I had to learn the story of the American Civil War and how really important it is to us in our history.
Yes, and for our viewers who are not from Franklin, Tennessee, Carton Plantation is a place, it's a central focus of your book, The Widow of the South, but it's also a place where during the Civil War, the Battle of Franklin, the wounded soldiers were taken in.
Right, it was the sole field hospital, that's battlefield hospital, at the time of the battle. The battle's late in the war. The big issue is going to be whether Lincoln will be reelected president. Because you got to see Gone with the Wind, but he doesn't, and he believes he will lose, and so he's trying to end the Civil War and save the Union before he leaves office. But he will have the Battle of Atlanta, and he will have the fall of Atlanta, and with that, he will be able to be reelected president. And so Franklin follows the fall of Atlanta. for a lot of people, I think, well, Atlanta fell, so that must have been the end of it. But it wasn't. And so the two armies ended up here in Middle Tennessee, trying to get to Nashville, which was the first Southern capital to have fallen. And they're trying to desperately get there, the Union Army to be safe, the Confederate Army to try to take the Union Army and then ultimately take Nashville. And the only reason that Franklin happened is that on that way to Nashville, the bridge was out and it had to be rebuilt. Now, there's about 25,000 Union troops and they could have waded through the little Harpeth River, but they're carrying an eon of materials that they don't want to fall into the Confederate hands. So that's basically why the battle happened. You know, one of the things I've been doing in the last few years is speaking on why the Civil War is important, because it's not simply important because you know, someone's family fought for the Union or someone's family fought for the South, or even if they were freed from enslavement. It's important if you came over here, because if anyone's throwing their lot with this nation, it's because of the American Civil War. It's the sole most important moment in our history. It's when we became Americans.
Yes, and what a huge turning point,
Yeah,
right, in the history, but also for individual people. And we're talking to Robert Hicks. When we come back, we'll talk about how that past and the stories from that past change us now. We're talking to Robert Hicks, author of The Widow of the South, and a lover of Franklin, Tennessee. Could I say that?
you sure can.
Yes.
I do love the town.
I do too. And you know, now I love it more, and thanks to your book. And I want to say that for the viewers, I highly recommend the book. It's not so much about the war and the politics of it. It's really about the human story and transformation. And I have to tell you, for me, it actually reminded me about love.
That's awful kind. Well, you know, that's what I wanted to write about. I wanted to write about transformation and redemption, because I mean, that's whether we're talking about war or whether we're talking about peace, whether we're talking about loss or gains, ultimately it is about human transformation that's really important in our lives. It's really pretty much the only thing I write about. I have a third novel coming out right now, and it's about transformation.
Yes.
So you know, that's what I wanted to write about, was that human story about the Battle of Franklin.
So you grew up with literature. You shared with me that you grew up with books and...
Sure. My parents loved books, and you know, we had a library in our home, and then when my oldest brother went off to prep school, they converted his room into another library. And so we had two libraries. And so, yeah, there was a great respect of books.
And did literature have, was that your turning points and your...
Sure, I think in many ways it always was. I mean, I never knew I would be a writer. Truthfully, I didn't. I mean, I went in the music business, and that's where I had my success, I thought. And it wasn't until I was over 50 that I decided, you know, I want to write. I want to write about these people and about their lives.
Yeah, but music is also storytelling.
Absolutely.
And transformation.
It is, and that was really my focus, was the singer-songwriter. I brought some people to Nashville and had some success, and that's always been my passion and interest. But, you know, now we move into something else.
I love it. I love the freedom to just move into something else. I think that is beautiful.
That's one of the great strengths of this country.
Yes.
You know, and that people can grab hold of something and move on.
Yes, and sometimes the past, and I come from a country that's been so pulled back by history and so many years of pain, of collective memory of pain.
Wow.
And we know that trauma and pain can be passed down. So how do we move away from it? And you work so much, on the other hand, to preserve the battlefields.
Well, I think that you should never move away from history now. You should move away from the pain of history. You should move away from the bad lessons of history. But the lessons are there. And I mean, if you lose that, then you've lost something really important. I mean, like I said, the American Civil War is that huge turning point. If you came over here, if someone comes over next year from Ecuador, whether they know it or not, they're coming because of the American Civil War. They're coming because of what the American Civil War made this country, that we stopped being Tennesseans and New Yorkers and whatever, and we became Americans. And that's the story.
Yes, and yet there is still pain that we hear and read
Sure.
about, and people saying, my family has experienced such injustice, or whatever the pain is.
Well, now let's be clear on this, that if someone can say, and people can, that my family's experienced so much injustice, that which moved us away from it is the American Civil War. Those we used to say 620,000, but those about 750, 850,000 people who died, and discounting about 1.5 million hopelessly wounded, had short and less productive lives, or those who later went and 10 years later, after they'd gone home to their sweethearts and wives and their farms and their businesses, went into a barn and blew their head off. All those people died in a sense to move us forward. And part of moving us forward was to begin to remove part of that injustice and those pains. You don't deny the past. I mean, or you're bound to repeat it.
Yes, and what I'm hearing is that we don't get bound by it, but we still have to choose. It's our choice to move away
Sure.
from it and move forward. We're talking to Robert Hicks about how do we take the stories and honor the past and allow it to transform us. Do you feel stuck in life? Are you waiting for a miracle? Would you like to transform your pain and anxiety into joy and freedom? Here's how. The answers are in my book, Turning Points. There are dozens of stories of people like you, people stuck in addictions, abuse, and bad relationships. But they all took that first step. They all went on a transformational journey, and so can you. Visit wakinguprevolution.com, amazon.com, or any major online bookseller. Get your copy and turn your life around today. I'm talking to Robert Hicks, and I listened to The Widow of the South, on Audible.
Good.
And I think that was a good choice because I loved how the narrators created that feel. I could not have read it with a Southern accent because I don't hear it in my.
No.
So, what do you prefer?
Well, I have to tell you something. It's a big secret I've never told anyone.
Oh, that's
I've
good.
never heard any audible of the book. Oh. I don't know what it is. I know that there's two. There's an abridged and an unabridged. I know that Thomm Jutz is the narrator of one of them. But I've heard, and when I went on Warner Books' longest book tour in history, and people would tell me how good it was.
Oh, it's brilliant.
And I mean, I heard this over and over, but I'd have to say I had nothing to do with
Yes.
it other than maybe giving them the original words. And so I have never heard a book on tape. I'm not against them. I support them, but I just can't make any claim.
Yes. So for me, now that I heard it, I have to have a copy, to go
Right.
back, and because I like to pull out my favorite passages. One thing that I have to say, that the advantage of listening to it, because you get distracted, you look at there, you look at your children, whatever. So I didn't realize the color of the skin of the characters. I didn't realize really who
That's
was
good.
on which side.
That's
So
good.
to me, there were these 3 or 4 or 5, 3 really main characters that I just couldn't wait, to hear about them. And that brought that human only human, deeply human perspective rather than seeing the surface.
Sure. Well, I think that's a good point. Again, I'm totally supportive of the audio versions of the book, but and I think you've given a good reason why I should listen to it.
So tell me, you write about love and romantic love so beautifully. Were any of your turning points connected with just beautiful, big love?
Sure. I think if we're going to be human, it has to be. And it's one of those things we understand. But that's pretty much what I write about. When I went on book tour, people ask, how can you write about a woman losing her child? How do you understand that? I go, well, because I'm really writing about human loss. And so whether we're talking about human love, or we're talking about human loss, my new book, the main part of the story is an African American woman, and so the question's going to come. How can you speak for her? But again, I think that the only answer I have is it's about being human. It's about the experiences that we have, both the strengths and the losses, all of that.
Yes, and we talk on this show about a lot of my guests, the turning points were connected with spirituality, with love that's bigger than all of us, the love that
Sure.
is a big force behind it all. And I think, the romantic love is kind of like what we forget to talk about as the culture, even as we go into love.
A great part of who we are.
Yes.
But everything in this world, both loss and gain, happiness and sorrow, all of it is a part of a rich fabric of who we are, of who we can be. We can spend the rest of our lives lamenting over loss if that's all we want to do. When I was a kid, we lived in South Florida in the wintertime, and I would go to friends' houses that were Jewish. And I remember the first time an older lady was serving me chocolate chip cookies, and I saw the tattoo number on her arm. And I was so shocked because for me, a child born well after the Civil War, after World War II,
right.
it was like as if she was born, talking about something in the Civil War. And I remember saying to my dad, I saw this. And he said, there are a lot of them around us, but I want you to see how they respond, because you only have two ways to respond to bad things that have happened in your life. You can either be bitter and angry and out trying to get revenge, or you can somehow want to make the world better. And so I think that's how we have to figure it out, to how we respond to things.
And that's why we tell stories of people who have overcome that. That's why we write about them and we say, here's the turning points, here's the shift they made, here's how they choose to love. Even when love, caused pain in the past, we move away from it and choose to love and feel compassion. And your new book is coming out when?
I have a new book coming out on Tuesday, September 13th, called The Orphan Mother. And my publisher says it is, so I guess I believe it, the best thing I've ever done. And I'm really excited about it.
Yes, can't wait. Well, thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
When we come back, we have questions from our viewers.
Are you planning a live event? Looking to bring inspiration and a fresh approach to wake up your community or organization? Tajci's keynote concerts are transformational experiences that lead your audience to a life of joy, authenticity, courage, and purpose. Book Tajci for your next event now by visiting wakinguprevolution.com.
I love that you're involved in asking questions of our guests, because this is about all of our transformation and growth. So Brian, a viewer from Nashville, says, you're a very successful New York Times bestselling author. You're a very successful bourbon maker, which we didn't talk about that, but that's a really interesting thing. And he asks, what does it feel like down in your spirit to have achieved these levels of success?
Well, First of all, I don't know that I feel like I've achieved these levels of success. I'm very fortunate. I really do feel grateful that I've been able to do some stuff, and you know, I'm excited about the bourbon. It's called Battlefield Bourbon, and we've had 2 complete years of it, and it's sold out, and we'll be putting it out again this year. But you know, I don't know. I mean, I'm just grateful.
Well, I think that's the biggest success that you can have, to have that level of success, which is gratefulness. That's beautiful. Thank you for the inspiration. And a question from a viewer from Croatia. We've had such a hard history of conflict. And Tomislav from Osijek in Croatia asks, have American people as a nation moved away from their problems that the Civil War tried to solve? And you know, I know his question comes from, can we ever move away from the problems that the war is supposed to solve?
You know, I would say no, we haven't. And I would say that the issue of race, which is so much at the core of the Civil War, is still with us. It's still with us as, again, humans. It's not necessarily a exclusively American issue. That, you know, race and hostility toward others that aren't like us is kind of one of those great sins of humanity. And so we hope that we are moving away from it. But, you know, there's a lot to come.
Yes.
Needs to happen.
And I will just have to say, because this is the Waking Up in America is the show that encourages every person to make that choice. If each one of us can, you know, just start from yourself, and we will collectively make a difference.
I think we're in a better place than we were when I was a kid. I think that when I was a kid was a better place than it was after the Civil War. And so yeah, there's increments, but no, of course, there's still a lot of sorrow in this world.
Now you ready for one-word answers? Ready?
Sure.
What is the most powerful force in your life?
Me.
Where would you be if you could be anywhere?
Here.
What time of your life would you visit if you had a time machine?
The next 10 years, that's not
That's okay. Your favorite time of day?
About this time. I don't know how to do one word. About this time, before it's dark, but you know, at the dusk of the day.
Dusk. I love dusk. Spring or fall?
Spring in Tennessee.
Water or forest?
Gosh, I live in a forest, so I would say water.
Candlelight or fire pit?
Fire pit.
Dessert or appetizer?
Beef tartare.
Last book you read?
The Orphan Mother. I finished it last night.
Wow.
Editing it.
Last photo you took with your phone?
An elevator shot.
If I could abolish anything from the earth, it would be?
Sorrow.
Songs or poetry?
Songs.
Favorite local charity?
Franklin's Charge, 2 words.
All that our world need is?
Love.
This year I claim?
Hope.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Robert, would you introduce the music that you picked for us?
You know what? I'm so excited that you all have Thomm Jutz, who is a great friend of mine, but he's not only one of the single best guitarists in Nashville, and that's, you know, my dad used to say I was guilty of EFE, exaggeration for emphasis, but this is a case where it's really not exaggeration, but more importantly, he's like a thinking person. He's a passionate person who loves American history, along with loving music. So I'm really glad he's here today.
Privet knob, ever bright, Carter House, Columbia Pike, Carnton lives, Carrie's dream, the old courthouse, and the cotton gin. And time goes by in the little town that was then, but this is now Hallowed Ground. Hallowed ground, hallowed ground. Lewisburg Pike, the Harpeth flow by the old Lodes house, the traffic road, history, you can see it still when you're looking down from Winstead Hill. And time goes by in the little town that was then, but this is now hallowed ground, hallowed ground, hallowed ground. The soldier stands in the old town square, and the people come from everywhere. Every year, November night, remembering by candlelight, and time goes by in the little town that was then. This is now hallowed ground, hallowed ground, hallowed ground. Yeah, time goes by in the little town that was then, and this is now hallowed ground, hallowed ground, hallowed ground.
We all have the stories in our past that we have to move away from, that we have to honor, but also have to willingly choose to let go of. What can you choose to let go of today? To replay this episode and share it with your friends, please visit wakinguprevolution.com, and there you can also find resources such as coaching and online courses and other episodes to inspire you and help you to move on and step into the joy and purpose of your life now. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time.
I'm Olga Alexeyeva. I'm the artist and owner of O Gallery. This episode was filmed at my studio at Marathon Village, Nashville. Please visit us at ogalleryart.com. Thank you.